Want to drive faster? Listen in as Kinch Rendell, an SCCA National Trophy winner and multi-time Pro Solo champion himself, interviews the best autocrossers in the land. He talks fast and drives even faster. And now here's your host, Kinch Rendell.
This features Tom Berry. He was your 2009 Driver of Eminence Award winner. He has 7 solo national championships. Starting back in 1995 and 96, he was your DSP national champion. 2003, 2007, 2008, 2009, your BSP national champion. In 2015, he's your ASP national champion. When it comes to Pro Solo, he was your overall challenge winner once, also a runner-up once, has 15 class championships, and about 10 challenge wins. I'm very impressed. 15 class championships, very impressive. I hope you'll notice that he mentions what he's learned from having data on the car. Driving smoother when it comes to braking and not putting the car on its nose, as he would say, is actually faster. We both rode together once about a year ago and think we drive pretty similar, even though we drive very different cars. So you'll notice when he's talking about that relates back to what Brian Peters said in the very first episode. So if you didn't hear that one, go back and catch it and start noticing what people are saying that's similar and what's different. And once again, try different thoughts or different tips from different people and see what works for you and for your car. I hope you enjoy it.
Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, you've got me up early for an early podcast. I like this. So tell us, when did this start for you? When did you get into autocrossing?
Well, going back a little bit further than I'd like to admit, 1976, I was at UC Riverside, and I was walking around campus and saw a flyer for the UC Riverside Sports Car Club, an autocross. And one of the guys that lived on my hall had a Fiat X19, and I talked him into going out and trying it very late in 76, my first year of college. And very unusual, very archaic compared to what we do now. It was on a 3 small lots joined by short chutes. We parked in one and raced in the other 2, and it was sloped and had curb planters, and almost every event somebody went away on the end of a hook. It was crazy. But a lot of fun, and kind of got me hooked, and I did it from 76 until 79 there at UC Riverside, and then when we went, we saved all the results from the 2 or 3 or 4 a year that we did there, and looking back at them over the years, years later, after we got back into the sport, we see names like Bob Endicott and the Jardines and the Cruzes. It's a bunch of people that are doing it even still today. So
that's nice. That's how addictive it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Warning for everyone listening: you may be addicted 30 years later, still doing this.
That's right. And
so were you into cars before that? Like, what was the draw? Were you always around cars, around some kind of racing?
Had not been. Very, very little. I always had an interest in cars, but it hadn't really gotten to anything. Later on in college, I started buying and selling cars to kind of make my beer money or whatever. But and I don't know if one led to the other or whatever, but I've always been a car guy.
And it sounds like you are still a car guy. You've stuck with something.
I have, and very, very much so. And it's still a passion for me. It's not just what I do for a living. It's something that I love doing.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was about to have to inject there just because I'm always thinking business, and we talk to like business. I keep telling people, if you can find something that's your passion, you'll stick with it, and it won't be considered work.
Yep.
You seem, like you said, you told me you're still in this. You've been doing this the whole time as well as racing.
Yes, very, very much so.
So that first car, what stands out back there in some of the first cars you raced Any favorites?
Yes, actually. The Honda Civic that my then girlfriend, Teresa, now wife, had. We ended up buying it and doing a little repair on it, and we started racing it, and that was actually the most fun of any of the cars back then.
And what year Civic model do you remember?
It was a 1979 or an 80, I think, because that was right at the very end of of doing the racing, and then marriage and life and kids and work and all that stuff got in the way until I started back up again in '91.
Oh wow, you took a decade off.
Yes. But I would show up to every event almost every event in a different car. Some of them were cars I would, bring a friend out and we'd share, or it would be one of the cars that I was fixing up to sell. I brought a 72 Corvette out once, and I had my Trans Am once, and just anything, four-door Accord, just didn't matter. Just whatever I had, I'd go out and race.
Yeah, and tell people, I mean, that's kind of the opposite of what I did. I always kind of stuck with the same car forever and ever. So give us your thoughts on literally driving all those different cars. How does that help you? How does that help somebody?
Oh, I think it's a huge help. It makes you adapt very quickly. If changing conditions or an issue with the car or anything like that, being able to jump in and most anything, and after you've turned the car, made two turns and hit the brakes once, it's like, okay, I know how to drive this.
Yeah, and plus, I think you must be adding more tools to your toolbox than me not driving much rear-wheel drive. And literally, I told you, I got in that Porsche, and I was a little bit like, oh gosh, it might spin. He seems to spin it a lot. So my confidence level has not been that high. So tell everybody, left foot, right foot braking, or a combination of both?
Definitely left foot braking. Some of the later cars you get into trouble with, like particularly later Volkswagens, because they don't like the left foot brake, and they go into into a brake failure or a limp home mode or traction control mode when you do it. So sometimes you have to either switch to right foot braking or not. But most cars respond pretty well to left foot braking.
And did you pick that up only for the turbo?
I picked that up when I was driving Mitsubishi Starion back in '92.
Oh wow! Okay, so you didn't just do it just because you got the Evo or something?
No, I'd been doing left foot braking for a long time before that. When I came back into racing back in '91, I was in a Dodge Conquest. And then I bought a Mitsubishi Starion and raced that for a year or so, and my progression over the 20 plus years that I've been doing it since I came back has been pretty fun. Once I got into the street prepared cars, it was kind of hard to go back to the stock cars, but I have.
Oh, and since I happen to know you get to drive the GT4 already, I noticed in the GT3, if I have too much gas and left foot braking, it truly will cut. Now, it's a smooth kind of cut. It's not disruptive. But the car owner was very surprised it would do that. And I was like, no, seriously, just cut again. I said, I did not lift right there.
Yep. I didn't notice that much in either the GT3s or the GT2s or the GT4 or any of the Porsches I've driven that much. But, yes, it's occasional, and it kind of catches you off guard a little bit.
Yeah, you're like, I didn't mean to lift there. Oh, so this is one thing I keep thinking I'm missing out on because I left foot brake. I think I don't include a lift, like a full hard lift to get a car to rotate. For me, I think it's either left foot brake or brake harder with the left foot, but I don't just leave the left foot off and lift. Do you happen to mix that in, just a lift by itself?
I do, depending on the car. One of the things about, for example, C4 Corvettes that are in stock or stockish trim, they settle very nicely off throttle, and that's one of the advantages driving a lot of different cars is that your brain kind of automatically does that after a while.
It's just another tool in your toolbox that literally you're like, oh, I should try a lift to see what the car will do.
Yes. And racing, in our region, we do, our weekend events are a championship on Sunday and a practice on Saturday. And, most of the times on Saturdays, I just show up with my helmet or buy an entry, and I've got people asking me all the time, hey, here, come ride with me, help me out, and, or sometimes they want me to drive their car or whatever, and, it's a lot of fun, and on a given Saturday, I might be driving, anywhere from 5 to 10 different cars throughout the day.
I remember seeing you last year when I came and bought Jeff's Civic or picked it up. I remember us having a few runs. You literally were hopping in and out, like, can I hop in? I'm like, sure. And that was fun. And something like, I know you've taught a lot as well as everything else you've done, but getting you in the car and both of us going back and forth, as you said, like, oh, you did that different than me. We would have to have data to figure it out, but I think it is eye-opening to get people in your car to say, hey, they did something different. I wonder if that works and if I can try that. What do you suggest to people? Do that and get people in their cars?
Without a doubt, and carry that even further. I tell people, particularly when they are either just starting out or at they're kind of plateaued in their driving, in their progression of driving skills, to stand there with your helmet and say, hey, can I take a ride with you? In their car or in their own car. And it's huge. Somebody else is always going to have some different way. I was fortunate enough. Even after all these years, I'm still learning a lot. I was fortunate to have Brian Highcotter. He comes down. He and Teddy Alexandrova. Sorry, Teddy. When they come down, they stay at our house. And for races and stuff. And I was fortunate enough to have Brian do a Saturday event with me where we were trading back and forth, and amazing skill level. And even after all these years I've been doing this, you can still learn a whole bunch. Now he's got me doing slaloms differently than or trying to do slaloms differently than the way that I've been doing it for quite some time.
Yeah, and I have interviewed him already. Tell me your thoughts. Let's get some top tips for slaloms. Let's say what you're trying to implement now, and maybe also, if it's helpful, tell people what you were doing or what you might do different in different cars.
Oh, sure. I was doing it wrong for years. One of the things about the way that the younger people learn these days is it's different than the way I learned. We didn't have data acquisition and telemetry of feedback systems. So I learned by, watching people and occasionally riding with people. And now they learn with data. And, Christine and Marshall, who are both engineers and very much into the data and the development end of cars, I learned a ton from them. They'd look at the data to go through and say, hey, Tom, look, you're doing this wrong here, or, Christine's doing it better than you here, or, Marshall. When the three of us are all driving the same car, and we're all looking at, data at the end of the day, we'll find that, there's sections of each course that each one of us are doing differently, and we're learning from each other. So it's been a big help for me. And they basically got me doing the slaloms better, teaching me how to not upset the car and, to settle the car before you enter any turn, but particularly slalom. So what I'm working on from, this may sound kind of crazy, but just before Nationals in 2015, all the pounding on Tom's head from Christine and Marshall finally paid off, and I kind of made a drastic change in my driving style, changing corner entry speed and settling the car more and stuff like that, within a couple of events before Nationals. And it paid off for me, this last year at Nationals.
So let me see if this is what you're probably getting at, because since I've already talked to Brian, he seems to want to brake smoother and earlier, and he definitely said he would not brake going into a slalom or a cone or two into it, which is what I still probably do. Several people I've talked to now are talking all about getting the car settled, I think is what you're saying, before getting in these things.
That without a doubt, and like I said, it goes for all the turns, not just the slaloms, but that's the area that I've been working on the most. And getting data from Brian driving the Evo and us driving back and forth and being able to compare it. But yes, he, as Marshall puts it, presents the car to the slalom much smoother. And I've been doing for years what you've been doing, Kinch. You kind of go in and stand it on its nose and flip it over at somewhere between the first and the second cone. But the car's unsettled at that point. You're asking the car to do something that is not really designed that well. Now, some cars you have to do it that way to get them to turn. But most cars are going to handle better when they are at a moderate throttle as opposed to standing on its nose.
That's a good point. Also, I'm glad you said different cars, and I've never even considered going from a stock Integra, let's say, to an ST Civic that they totally feel different. Yes, the power is about the same, honestly. But that's a good point. Maybe what I was trying to do in the Integra should not be applied to other cars, especially, let's say, a Porsche. Maybe that's why I realized it seems like that thing can turn better for the car owner than me, but I think I'm braking late. And that's kind of the opposite of what you're saying you've been implementing and what Brian definitely told us as well.
Yes, definitely implementing a brake earlier and accelerate earlier. But what I found is when I changed my driving style and then just before National and implementing that, and then Brian jumps in the car and he's actually braking a little bit later than me, but he's braking much smoother. And it's not just how he's applying the brake, it's how he's letting go of the brake.
Yes.
That was surprising me, because he's, we're looking at the data and watching what he's doing, and he's not left foot braking, and yet it's so incredibly smooth how smooth he's coming off the gas and getting on the brake and getting off the brake and getting going back and forth. It's just so smooth that he's not upsetting the car anyway. It's what people have told me over the years. Hey, you look and feel smooth, but you're fast. It looks slow. But yep. and he is that to the next level. I guess that comes with being a professional race car driver as opposed to somebody that goes out and does it a couple times a month for fun.
I like how you said just a couple times a month. Let me tell you, a little segue here, or not even a segue, actually, we'll come right back to this. He mentioned they have a Saturday and Sunday. Each time they have a Saturday practice. I think when I was out there, I could have taken like 16 runs or something. And then Sunday, I guess you could stick. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, we're doing. Usually our practices are a minimum of 12, and we can usually get up to 14 or 15 runs on a Saturday practice. And man, talk about the ability of getting good much faster than what we had available to us. When I started, there was one event every other month, and I mean, you got 3 lots. To tell you how archaic this was, when I started back in '76, the parking lot that we paddocked in, it wasn't even a paddock, it was a long line. It was a long line that snaked through the parking lot. You literally moved your car forward, ran over to the edge of the course and watched the course, ran back, moved your car up 2 or 3 spots, ran back, moved your car, you're running back and forth to watch what's going on. And one big line, no such thing as warm tires. Now it was after, the stopwatch era, where they were using people with stopwatches. We actually had time, electronic timing when I started, but very archaic back then by today's standards.
That's good. Now I have to remember to ask some of these people about stopwatches. That's good. I'll be like, oh, you raced when? Yeah. What was the brand of stopwatch you preferred?
That's right.
So you mentioned data. What data system do you use, or have you used different ones?
The one that we have on the Evo that we're primarily using is the DL1, I'm not really a techie. I know just enough about computers to be dangerous. But Marshall and Christine, spend their lives at computers. So, they set it all up and all of the parameters. Marshall's got all kinds of stuff set up with the car. So it's not just the line you're taking and the speed you're going and stuff, but, you can get individual wheel speeds and yaw rates and steering input, and how much you're on the brake and how long and how much you're on the brake, and just, an incredible amount of information, that's very helpful with car setup. Marshall is, incredibly good at car setup. He's made that Evo work so well. It's almost unbelievable when you think about the physics of that car to think of how well it's currently working.
It's just a little nose heavy. So
62%, give or take. But Marshall needs to have his brain challenged all the time, and you guys, the rest of the country is going to see what has happened to KJ Christopher's A-Mod car. KJ won A-Mod this last year by a healthy amount, and that was mostly Marshall's doing. He's been very involved in that. Rick Ruth's definitely going to have to stand up and take note, because that car he's beaten me by 2+ seconds after index right now.
Oh, so index +2. So you're not going to catch him.
I'm not going to catch him. He was second place behind me. Marshall was. Now, at this last event we just had, KJ beat me by over a second. Marshall, I beat him, but he was 0.7 of a second behind me with 2 cones on the run.
Oh.
Yeah. and in the practice the day before, he was further than that ahead of me and other people that, the ones that we take our data points from. But,
wow.
And that's Marshall doing. They literally cut the back end of the car off and re-welded it on differently and changed the whole rear suspension setup. And then after they got done with that, they cut the whole front of the car off. And that's what makes Marshall. That's what gets him all excited is taking something like that and reinventing the wheel.
So for us mere mortals out there, we have to either hire Marshall or stay in stock class, is what I think I'm hearing.
Well, you can't hire Marshall because I pretty much put an end to all that. I told him, you can't do that anymore. I'm kidding. I'm just glad to have him on my team on keeping my car the best it can be. He's a big help. Just not this last event, but the one before. He says, okay, I'm going to do this. He made a right eye change, and he says, I'm going to and I'm going to do it because of this, and because he used to ask my permission to do things. Now he just tells me as more of a courtesy. But it's great having him on board, and he loves that part of the challenge as much as the driving.
Nice. And like you said, you guys have a whole family, a whole team together. It's all about the team, as you said. You've had so much fun just interacting with them. That's great that you get such good team members as well as in-laws, I guess, family members.
Absolutely. We have the family members and the extended family, but we have, Berry Family Racing goes beyond that. I have a second race car, the SPX BMW, and we've got people in that. And it's fun to be around, the younger people that, with this incredible skill set. Jeff Stewart, who drove it for several years, And the only reason he didn't have a national championship several years earlier would be that he got Brian Hightotter, who was driving the Charlie Davidson, STX BMW years before. But having people like Jeff Stewart drive the car, and Mark Deshawn, who's becoming a very good car setup person himself. He's the one that developed the Z car that Jeff Stewart won in 2015. And then the new kids on the block, Brandon Parambo and Adrian Cardenas and some of these other people that are you're going to see these names. They're part of our team, plus a whole bunch of other people. It's almost, for me, as much about the social aspect now as it is about the driving. It's usually a weekend. We've got, 2 or 3 or 4 people staying at our place over the weekend, people coming in from out of the area or whatever. And, it's kind of a party. We sit around and bench race all weekend.
Believe you me, I want to find a way just to ship a car out there and leave it there. Because when I came out just for the Saturday, I'm like, they do this like every month for sure, maybe a couple times a month somewhere in Southern California.
Well, when you come out, we'll put you in a car and you can be part of our team.
I am getting braver about driving some of these different cars, finally. Something I keep thinking that you mentioned that is important at times I get this right, coming off of the brakes. I don't remember if it was the book I read or something made me realize, wow, when you're shocking, especially a front-wheel drive car, I'm really good at hitting the brakes hard, but I'd never thought about coming off easy. But when I'm doing that, I notice that the car is so much smoother in whatever turn or slalom, whatever it is. It is amazing if you can get your brain wrapped around that. I mean, did you notice that when you finally said, oh, he's telling me to release much easier? What did you notice?
Well, like I said, it feels so slow because the car's not doing anything, and people like you and I, Kent, in the past have always been used to a car's fast if it feels like it's being dynamic. If it's if you're getting a lot of movement, at least that's the even if you don't consciously think about it, it's the underlying hey, I'm really fast today. I'm really getting a lot of movement out of the car, and then you ride with somebody like Brian, and it's like he's not moving the car at all. It's eye-opening, and it's required a lot more thought now to drive the car to think, okay, what would Brian do in this situation? Or having Christina Marshall say, hey, you know what? Here, you're doing this wrong. Here, do this better, or come off the brake easier here, or hit the brake easier there. You're upsetting the car too much, or you're getting too much wheel spin here, or whatever. It's almost like a new challenge for me, even though I've been doing this forever. It's like a new challenge. Here, now let's take it to the next level, and that's always, that's something that I think all of us can learn from. Is here, how do I take my driving or my car or the combination of the two to the next level? I can remember years ago at the San Diego National Tour back in '94 or '5. I was driving a Mustang that year, and I ended up out on course with working course with Bob Cannell. And I'm thinking, oh boy, I get to be next to Bob Cannell on course. And he probably got tired of me, but I was just pumping him for information the whole time. What about this? What about that? How do I take my driving to the next level? Because he was one of those people that was, he was the man. He was the one that I used to watch whenever I go to a national event. It was him or John Ames or Gary Thomason that I was watching their runs and watching how to drive, since we didn't have data and we weren't doing that much, switching back and forth with cars. So you learned from talking to people and watching them, and he was very, very gracious. Bob and Patty Cannell are two of the nicest people, not just in solo racing, but of people that I know. And incredible people, and always willing to give back. And he was very helpful, and mostly about how to take my driving to the next level.
That's great to hear. And actually, he actually came out to the event a couple of days ago, so he had the BMW out there and was out there practicing in the Winter Series, which I haven't seen him out here in Winter Series in years. So hopefully he's going to make a more full year campaign this year.
I'm glad to see he still has the bug, the passion, to come out and drive.
Yeah, I think they've been giving so much. I mean, his trips to Afghanistan and such that, as you said, he is such a giver. And even with us, I remember having him ride with me and do different things. And in my Integra, one of those, he actually hit a cone. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'll get that cone mark off there." I'm like, "Wow, it's Kinch. You don't have to worry about that. It really doesn't matter."
Cut it out. Quit being so nice, would you?
And I can tell everybody, you mentioned learning by watching. That's pretty much what I did, because when I began, my sponsor, I won't mention his name this time, he literally got me into this and he said, "You don't want to ride with people and you don't want to be a novice." He goes, "You don't want to put it in by your name." So I literally learned a ton by just watching. And it was watching Bob Tennell, David Falk, John Ames. Just watching. Things as simple as I would just implement these things not knowing. John Ames would come up to a cone, and it's going to be a right-hand turn, but it would dip left. Like, might move the car 3 or 4 inches, but you would notice it. And I finally asked him. He said he was just preloading the car. And then you see Bob Tennell in a slalom, the brake lights come on in a lot of slalom cones. And I was like, what are you doing? He goes, "Oh, you noticed that?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're tapping the brakes." He goes, "I'm just putting a little more weight on the nose." I'm like, so it's amazing what you can learn, whether it works or not for you. You'll notice tons of things they're doing.
And whether it works for the car. You know, some cars have to be settled in a slalom. I found driving some of the Cam T type cars that with the archaic suspension systems that some of them have, sometimes you have to unsettle the car to get it to rotate. And this is one of the things that I think we're going to see a new Kinch Rendell here. Driving other, instructing more and driving other people's cars and adding to his skill set.
Yeah, I can tell you, I've always been scared that, like what you said, you went to SP and you didn't want to go back. So I've always told myself, stay out of the really fast cars because you're going to go there and you're never going to come back. So I've delayed. But if nothing else, I can tell everybody, just me being brave enough to say yes to get into a Porsche, and then I haven't wrecked it, I haven't done anything too bad with it, it did build my confidence already, just 2 events. I'm like, oh, this even sticks more than the S2000s I've driven. So yeah. I keep hearing from you guys, getting lots of cars, and I usually don't ever ask to get in somebody's car. But since somebody asked me and I've done it, I can tell people you should try that as much as possible. And being front-wheel drive mainly, I would tell you, even get in some of those, especially some of these ST Civics. I think you'll be surprised what they can and can't do.
Absolutely. And with the street tire classes that we have right now and all the different, it adds this dimension of here's another way that you can, make your car a lot more fun than stock and not spend $1 bazillion. And yet you can still, end up going from an ST Civic to an STU Z car or or an Evo or something like that. And even in the Civic class, you have the Miatas in there, and talk about 2 cars that have to be driven completely different. That's wild. But as far as you jumping into from your Integra or an ST Civic into a Porsche, I think you should walk before you run there, buddy. I think jump into some of the cars that are a little bit easier to adapt to if you're learning adapting. I mean, yeah, if you want to be thrown right into the fire, yeah, a 911 based car, very, very tricky to drive well, really, really fast.
Yeah, and I'll admit, this being 2016, the packs for Super Street, I'm not sure if you've looked. Every ST class has to raw time Super Street.
Well, that's because most of them can't. We've seen it in the development of the tires. When the ST classes first came out, we all saw that hey, you can't win a PAX class in an SD car because you're not going to start out with putting the SD cars in with too easy an index. You're going to keep it hard because I think Rick Bruce knew that the tire wars were going to be developing in that area more so than anybody else, and it's a good thing he had a clue in that area.
Yeah, it's so challenging. You'll see on the internet people, I hate the PAX calculator racing. So I've realized I can't bash myself because sometimes on some of our lots, I realize in my ST Civic, I am not going to compete at the very top unless a lot of people have a very bad day. It's not going to happen.
Right.
I mean, there's always seems like there's one class, and especially for the ladies index and pros, oh my goodness. I'm glad I'm not playing that game at all. Seems like each year the Whiteners, hey, what can we drive? I'm like, I just don't love to build cars that much. If I was a Marshall or somebody, I probably would. Like, yes, another one.
Yeah.
So, but I can tell you, I guess, for anybody hopping in cars, I've driven a Z06 maybe one run, and I was so scared of my right foot because I have a Civic and an Integra, and I'd plant my foot. The Porsche was so gradual on. We left it in second gear, and in these really tight turns, I could mash it, and I did not get in trouble. So in reality, it was even, somehow it's tighter than the STR S2000 I've driven quite a bit. It wasn't as snappy. I can't explain why it's supposed to be more of that. It hasn't been so far. Maybe like we said yesterday, the tires being all new, so far so good until the rear wear out.
Right. But what I found in the 911 based Porsches is that it's not about the throttle application. It's about the throttle off that gets when those cars get scary. Which makes sense because the engine's hanging off the ass end. But you can drive one of those cars, in my opinion, up to 9 or 9.5 tenths, really pretty easy. It's that last, the last tenth or so that really makes those cars difficult to drive. You want a wild ride? Ride with somebody that really knows how to drive a 911 based cars, like Michael O's. One of the local guys in our area. I love riding with him in his GT3 because it's poetry in motion. Watching him control the car, and it starts to go and he catches it, and I still get a big kick out of just riding with anybody. I don't care if they're really good or really not good. You can learn a little something from almost anybody.
I so agree. And you mentioned that earlier, getting people to ride in your car and drive your car. I did that with somebody that was about at my level, probably a good 10 years ago. And they did some things. I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know I could do that. And then Bob Klingler got in one event with me. I was like, why was I braking so much there? He just flew through that section. I mean, literally, they might be better than you, but they might be on your level. And like you said, also getting a kick. I was this last event being with all the poles and a small lot and curbs. My first run was like 3 seconds or 2 seconds slower than the car owner. And then I rode with him. And I was like, that was just fun. I was like, wow. I mean, a lot of times as a passenger in some of these better, faster cars, it's just plain fun to ride.
Oh yeah, and it's and it's fun at this point because with all the different cars I've driven, it's even fun to get in a car that doesn't work. Because that becomes a challenge in itself to make the car work, to figure out in a short period of time how to get, a car that doesn't work. Years ago at Cow Club, we had a trophy dash car. It was a Hyundai Scoop that Hyundai had donated to us. And if you won your event, or won your class at an event, at the next event, when you were done with your class run, you took 2 runs in the Scoop. And so we competed against each other, the best drivers in the Scoop. And at the time, Craig Angel, I don't know if it was intentional or just he was throwing whatever tires he had on the car, around on the car. But the car would be different. One time he would have our compound tires all the way around, and the next time he would have ours in the front and street tires in the rear. Or he'd put street tires on the front and our compounds in the rear. And it made the car different almost every time. So it was fun to drive and a challenge to drive because you were actually competing in a car that sometimes worked like complete crap. And it was definitely a challenge. And competing in that car against all the rest of the best drivers in the region.
And that's something you've said a couple times here that I should note. Challenges and experiments. You guys will experiment. Marshall will change the car, and try things. That reminds me of all these business books and stuff I've been reading. Have challenges for your business. Have experiments. Try a Facebook ad. Try something else. Try a different car setup. And I can beat on myself for not doing that. I change the shocks maybe once a year. Of course, now I finally have Jeff's. I have Jeff's shocks actually on the car. The car's back in the state as of last night. So the goal was last year, get these shocks on there and make some adjustments and see if you can tell what's different, or at least data. Do something to experiment, to push yourself like you're saying you have going on.
You honestly, you have to do it. If you're just stagnant, if you haven't changed anything or whatnot in your car in a long time, you're stagnant. And obviously that doesn't apply to all cars, but most cars, if you're not trying different stuff, you're getting passed up. Somebody else is going to have the desire, and it's no different with business. If your business plan hasn't formed in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you're probably not being as successful as you can.
Yep. And you don't know. You just don't know what works and what doesn't work. Tell us what your thoughts are on walking courses, and if you want to mix in there looking ahead, or what you notice at least walking courses, how much? Are you picking out key cones? Are you memorizing lots of cones? Do you walk a lot? What are your thoughts on walking?
Oh, definitely my thoughts on the walking is it's easy to do too little or too much. Me, with a course walk, I walk the course once, and then I stand off to the side and think the course through in my head, and then go back and watch it and walk it a second time. And since there's usually somebody with me that wants to know my thoughts on the course, I'm vocalizing my thoughts on the course, and that helps solidify it in my head. And I'm really only trying to pick out maybe a half a dozen or so key cones, and whatnot throughout the course. A mistake that I made at Nationals years ago several times was walking the course too much. In my opinion, if you walk it too much, your brain no longer has to, you're no longer forcing your brain to think and look ahead and all that stuff when you're actually driving it. You think about what you do at a local event. How many course walks do you get at a local event? Well, me, I'm lucky if I get 2 or maybe 3. So I try to apply that to when I go to Nationals or a tour or something like that. I don't want to overwalk the course. 2, 3, maybe 4 times. Beyond that, you're not forcing your brain to look ahead and now to think ahead. And as far as the looking ahead thing, I'm not sure that I do that well, but I think the look ahead thing is more important for the beginners and the intermediate people. What I tell the people that are in the intermediate range and trying to move to the next level is don't concentrate so much on looking ahead, but concentrate on thinking ahead.
Okay, yeah, that literally, what are you going to do next to help you know how to get in and out of that element?
Right. When you look at a corner, when you're walking the course, you're not just looking at that corner. You're looking and thinking about that corner, about how that corner leads into the next corner. And there's times when you have to look ahead, but there's times when it's such a mess where you are, you can't really look ahead. You got to think ahead.
Oh, and that brings us back to the slaloms and looking ahead. Like Leslie Cohen, she said she looks down the whole slalom. And someone told me that a couple years ago, and I'm thinking, do I ever look all the way down the slalom? And I've done it a few times, but I think I scan so much, I might glance up. In the big course, or the big sections, definitely. But when it comes to a slalom, I don't know if I'm looking at much more than the next 2 cones max. What are your thoughts? Do you know what you're doing in a slalom?
I'm doing pretty much what you're doing. But that's also on my list to try differently. I didn't specifically ask Mr. Highcotter what he's doing in that way, but I know that's one of the things that some people teach is looking down the slalom. I've never implemented that. So definitely on the list to try, but no, I don't. I'm with you. I'm looking usually 2 cones ahead.
What I tell people is I'm always judging because I'm scanning. So after having somebody ride with me, or I rode with them, I told them to look across the course. They looked across and never looked back to the middle of the course, or middle of the, let's say, 180. So they blew the middle section. I said, you've got to scan. You look ahead and you look back to where you're at. And in a slalom, I'm definitely doing that because any key cone, I need to judge, am I as tight to it as I need to be, especially in a 180. I find myself modulating speed with braking or gas to get to my point. So I have to look as I come up to the cone, and then I scan back ahead. So in the slalom, a couple of times I've literally done this. I've looked down the whole thing. I was like, wow, there's a lot of cones there. And it's a different thing for my mind going, why are you looking at a line of cones as you go across them? So as you try this, it'd be interesting to hear later this year if you go, I looked down and there were a bunch of cones in a line. But I don't know what to do with that yet. I'm also going, what do I do?
Yeah, but I think if you look too close at the cone you're going into in a slalom, you end up making too many adjustments, throttle adjustments or, turning in more or braking or whatever. And that's one of the things that Marshall and Christine have forced me to do is to quit making so many adjustments. I'm upsetting the car too much in the middle of the slalom. And, and they can prove it with data that at least for what I was doing, was slower than what they were doing.
So basically smoothing.
Yeah, Christine is a great slalommer. She's the one of the 3 of us that leads the way usually in slalom, and teaches the rest of us how to do it.
And that's the other key for people, especially with data. You can know what you're best at. Otherwise, you're just kind of guessing, am I good at slaloms? Am I good at sweepers? Am I good at braking late? The data will truly tell you some of that stuff. It'll tell you if you're driving a tight line or not a tight line. Are you a tight and tidy always person, or are there times that you would sacrifice distance to accelerate or something?
Tight and tidy is my default. When in doubt, I'm always going to take a tidier line. And it's not just because it might be faster. The tighter lines have a tendency to be a little bit cleaner. You look at a course, you walk a course at lunch, and you find that the line that you were going to take is dirty because everybody's doing it wrong, or too many people are doing it wrong, and it's marbled up. John Ames was the king of the tight and tidy as far as when I was in my earlier stages. I'd watch him, and hey, nobody's going over there. Oh, he is. Okay, I think I'm going over there.
And when you say tight and tidy, if people haven't gone to a national event or nationals, unless you are the first people out in the first part of the day, you cannot take those other lines. I mean, what he said marbled up. Seriously, I would have co-drivers come back with gobs of rubber, other people's rubber, OPR, and be like, oh my goodness, they went offline and now I have 3 or 4 millimeters of extra stuff going thunk, 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 thunk.
Yep.
So, and you're so right about John Ames. That's where he took me aside at some point or talked to me at an event and had his top 3 rules. And he was like, never go extra distance for extra speed. And literally, as you said, your default, that's the perfect way to say it. For me, tight and tidy is my default. And I think that most anybody can be really fast if they're tight and tidy and are getting close to the limit. I think that is the best default program, as you just said, that anybody could have and then build upon that. I think at times in the Civic, I've even had Robert Thorne tell me, open the wheel more as you're accelerating out of the turn. So every once in a while now, I do feel like I break the rules that I've always driven with, but I was getting beat by Jeff Long and Jason Frank, and it's like, okay, I've got to go faster somewhere somehow.
You got to keep trying stuff. You got to keep doing stuff. and honestly, one of the things that I got from Bob Tennell years ago when I asked him, how do I go to the next level? And the first thing out of his mouth was, put your butt in the seat as much as you can. He said he used to go out to the go-kart track or the Malibu Grand Prix thing that we used to have before an event, as many events as you can go to. If you want to get good, you better practice a lot. And we have, at least in our region, we have that a lot. And in Southern California, any given weekend, you can find an autocross or a race somewhere. But it doesn't have to be just autocross. Go to the kart track, go to the K1, go to the, it's still training your brain to do all of the things that we need to do in order to be good at this. There's a reason why Brian Highcotter is as good as he is. He practices all the time, and he's driving, and he's doing different stuff too. I heartily encourage anybody that's doing what we're doing. Go do a 24 hours of lemons race or a chump car race or a track day. The Track Night America. I took the SCX BMW out to Track Night America up at Streets of Willow and just had a blast. I got Philip Royale to ride with me and, here, tell me what I'm doing right or what I'm doing wrong or, how, this is different than what I'm used to. Tell me how to make me better. And he was very helpful.
You're open to the challenges as well. I mean, obviously getting them in the car and being a proud dad saying, hey, can you beat me? Come on, push me.
Hey, I proudly wore that skirt at the Pro Solo Banquet in 2014 when Christine beat me.
And told all the other guys not to be laughing because they should have one on too.
That's right. Every one of them. But I've been fortunate, and I've been driving Evo a long time for me. I've had the progression. I've raced in the street repair. I was in DSP and then CSP, and then went into ESP and then back into a stock class, and then into a BSP in a Corvette, and then in another Corvette, and you got to have. I recommend to people get a co-driver, somebody that you can race with on a regular basis and learn from each other. Starting from 1994 on, I've had a co-driver every year. Somebody that we can, talk about the course and in later years getting data from, and hopefully somebody that will cause you to be push that extra little bit and to gain information from and to share with. Steve Agina and I have co-driven together 3 different years, twice in his Camaro and once in my Corvette, and it's not just about learning from each other and stuff, but it's about sharing the experience. It's a whole different it's a whole different thing when you're sharing somebody that, particularly with somebody that you really like. And I've been fortunate to have some really build some great friendships from co-driving with people over the years. Not only that, but by co-driving with Steve for all those years, when he gets his brand new his GT2 several years ago, and he says, "Here, Tom, drive this." Okay, that forced me here, and he gets his GT4 recently. I've driven his GT4 probably at 4 or 5 different events already. And what a sweet ride right out of the box.
Don't say that. I told you yesterday. I want one of those. Oh.
It does. As I've been telling people, it does not suck. That is a sweet car and stupid easy to drive. It's super easy to drive. you get into a 911 base car, a turbo, or a GT2, or a GT3, or anything like that, and it's a challenge, and it makes you think and all that stuff, and it's fun. But the GT4 is just, you can get in it instantly. You know, it's very intuitive. It's really easy to drive.
I'll put everybody, just let me know if you would like me to co-drive your GT4. I'll just put that out there.
Put that out there.
I would like to
setting
buy
the offer
one.
on the table now.
Yeah, I would love to buy one, but as Salil told me, people are driving them 2,000 and 3,000 miles and marking them up $10,000 and selling them. So they're not quite a sticker price of $85,000. I like that idea. I'm like, I could somehow figure out how to make that work. I almost justify it. So I think you have to go pretty soon here, but are there any books that you'd recommend people read, or knowledge, or websites, or?
You know, I hate to sound this way, but I don't read that much. I do read magazines. And I do try to absorb driving techniques and stuff like that, but not so much about from a book. It's mostly about reading articles and racing magazines and car magazines. I'm one of the I'm Tom at Tom the Car Guy. I sit down when Car and Driver comes every month. I sit down and read the whole damn thing. But that's kind of the extent of my reading.
And as you said, the seat time, getting in the seat, getting people in the car, getting co-drivers that can challenge you and help you and make it more fun even. I mean, don't forget the fun part. I mean, I get in to help some people, and they are freaked out, and they're so hard on themselves. Oh, this isn't happening, and that's not happening. And I say, wait a minute, are you having fun? Oh, yeah, right. And there are certain people that I tell on a regular basis, don't forget that the bottom line is you're here to have fun. If you're just here to compete and win, you're missing out on at least 50% of what the solo racing community has to offer. I've recently gotten involved with some of the people driving the Cam T type cars, and after being around our group for a couple of events, it's a very consistent comment that they're making. You guys are here. You're having fun. You're here. You're competing. Yes, and you're this happy medium between wanting to do well and competing well, and yet still helping everybody else out and having fun. That's something that I think that we enjoy in the solo community as much or more than any other form of racing, at least that I've been involved with, and from what I hear from people that come from other types of racing, it's something they appreciate. So don't forget how much fun it is, how much fun you're having, and how much fun you should be having. Because if you're just here for the racing, I think you're missing out on half of it. Yeah. And tell me this. Two little final questions here. First one, let's go with, if you could co-drive anybody's car, is there any cars on the list you haven't driven yet that you'd like to?
Well, I gotta admit, now that I've driven KJ's A-Mod car in the past, not very often, just a couple of times. We do a snacks cup thing locally where you put 3 people in 3 different types of cars and you compete. So, and I've driven that car, but since Marshall has waved his magic wand over it, I cannot wait to get in that car. And in fact, I'm prepping for it up front. I'm watching their videos that they post online and watching and saying, oh, okay, look what he's doing there, or and trying to identify what I would do if I was driving that car. So I don't think my time is coming up anytime real soon, but I've already kind of planted the seeds of, oh, it looks kind of fun. and KJ's already kind of half-assed said, yeah, we'll have to put you in it sometime.
Nice.
And I'm liable to take him up on that. I have had the option in the past to drive. I did get a chance to drive Jeff Kiesel's car quite a few years ago, and I did it very poorly. But now I think I'm to the point where I could better jump into a car like his or KJ's A-Mod car or something like that. And I have spent some time in Formula type cars, in C-Mod cars and D-Mod type cars. I think that's my, next area that I think I would have fun with. And I don't know if Marshall's trying to let the cat out of the bag yet, but he did buy a B-Mod car about a year ago that he's
working.
He's not really working on it, but he's thinking about it, and that's how Marshall works. He'll think about it for quite some time and then, start executing. But I think for me, I think that's the next realm, if you will. But I'm never going to go away from, here, let me go try this for a while. I'm super open to most anything. But as far as the stuff I drool over, yeah, I have instructed for some of the companies like Imagine Lifestyles and stuff like that, where you're teaching, where you're driving people in, the Lamborghinis and the Ferraris and stuff like that. That's a lot of fun. But I've done it, and honestly, my Evo's a lot better than all those cars, at least at this point. Yeah. Now, when you talk about drooling over a car, years ago, and I was trying to remember his name. I can't remember his name, but he came out with a brand new back in 2009, a brand new Ferrari Scuderia. And he brought it out as one of the first times he had it out. And he had given somebody a ride, and I stand in there with my helmet. I go, please, can you please take me for a ride in your car? He goes, ride nothing. Here, drive it. Oh. And my jaw just dropped to the ground. I go, are you sure? Yeah, here, drive it. And I'm trying to remember his name. I can't remember. One of the things about being older is you forget things, but everything's brand new. Hey, it's all brand new. I haven't done this. Oh yeah, I am. Anyway, so he says, here, drive it, and I sit down in his car, and this brand new Scuderia has 440 miles on it. It's not even, in my mind, broken in yet. And he says, here, drive it. And it's, and after he tells me how to use the paddles, and I'm out there on course, and I mean, to me, it's just freaking meatball surgery. I'm screwing everything up, and with the paddle shifters being on the column instead of on the steering wheel, I hit the windshield wipers, a third of the way into the run, and I'm embarrassed, but still end up beating him by, a second or so, and from that point on, it was like every time he had the car out, he walked over to me and says, okay, your turn, drive it, show me how to do it. And so I probably had 100 runs in that car over the 2 or 3 years he was driving it.
Okay, I've learned. I'm going to stand there with my helmet next to people and just put it out there. I mean, this works in business too, people. Tom lets people know what he's thinking. He puts it out there, plants these seeds early, and they kind of start coming to fruition and growing. All right, so you've talked about the cars. Yeah. If there was a blank checkbook, what would you be building next?
Oh man, you know what? I really don't even think about that because I'm not sure there would ever be that situation. It would probably have to be some sort of open wheel type car with lots of wings on it.
You like rockets. What I'm learning is you're into the rocket stage. You like things that are rockets.
I like it as a change. That might be different. But see, now the challenge with me at this point, I'm 58 years old, and I don't have delusions of grandeur. I don't think that I don't think that I could get into KJ's A-Mod car and beat Marshall. He's too young and too smart. I can fall back on my experience in a lot of cars. That's probably not one of them where, my experience would help me as much as the sharpness of somebody that's, 15, 20 years younger than me.
Yeah.
Because
you're not going pro.
No, I'm not going to go pro on that one yet. And I'm not ready to check out yet. Go buy a car that I'm going to just drive just to come out and have fun and just tool around the course in.
Of course not. That's what I love about the sport. We can compete and compete and compete. It's amazing.
Yep, and you're always going to find some class or some car or something that you can go compete in, even if you don't have the cat-like reflexes of a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old. It's no different than business. You keep yourself challenged and you keep your mind going. And I'm teaching myself Spanish now.
I keep saying I'm going to do that again.
Partly because of where I live. Let's face it, I'm a minority now. But partly to keep my brain, going and changing and challenging. And I try to apply that to my business also. I've got to keep forcing my business and changing, and because things are you'll get left behind.
Yep, I totally agree. So yeah, tell me if you got to go that we can wrap this up. But it's been great. All the knowledge, all the insight, the stories. It's been fun.
I have another 10 minutes if you have any more questions. I mean, now one of the things that I get asked a lot, and it's, hey, now you've been driving the Evo for 5 or 6 years and, you're used to changing cars more often. How long is the Evo going to be around?
Yeah.
Before you move on. And the challenge is that the Evo is such an incredible all-around car. Not to mention, it used to be I fear the rain. When you're driving a C5 Corvette, you fear the rain because that can be kind of a challenge in the rain. But we don't fear the rain anymore in the Evo, and it's all the way that Marshall's got it set up right now. It almost doesn't have an Achilles heel. There isn't, of course. So every time we sit down and think, okay, well, we've been driving the Evo now for 6 years now, and this is a new record. My RX-3. My DSP and then CSP RX-3 is I drove that for 5 years, and now I've just surpassed that with the Evo. Now it's been 6 years, and every time we sit down, at the end of nationals, Christine and Marshall, I usually sit down and go, okay, what's next? Do we want to go someplace else? And the challenge is that there isn't anything without spending a lot more money that we can go to that's going to be as successful and or be as much fun, without spending many, many times more money. It was an expensive car to buy when I bought it from Andy Lieber, but and it was like, can I really justify this? But it's one of those that I have never, rarely ever looked back and said, I wish I hadn't done it. It's just been such a great car, and but something is going to come along probably sometime, and it's going to catch my fancy. And I said, you know what? All right, team, let's go do this.
Yeah, you're being open to possibilities, basically. And I can see
Absolutely.
us having a whole call just on pro solos, because what you said, rain, no rain, believe you me, I think it was last year's spring Nats or something. It rained. I'm like, oh, for the challenge. I'm like, yeah. I have no analytics.
And for those of you listening out there, if you're not into pro solo or you haven't done a pro solo, myself, Christine, Marshall, most of our team feels that pro solo is the most fun you can have autocrossing. because it's not just get in your car, take a run, get out of your car. And there's so much to it, and the whole mental game of preparation and all that stuff goes so far. I have more than twice as many championships in pro solo as I do in solo too, and partly it's because that's as much my passion in solo racing is geared towards the pro solo series, and just to me it's the most fun you can have.
I second that wholeheartedly. That's how I know you guys, because I'm addicted to driving across the country for pro solos, period. From coast to coast. I've never gone to Florida, but eventually I should probably make it down south.
Yeah. Well, you gotta do it. And the fact that it's a series forces people to go, to do some traveling and go to different areas. I mean, look at, we don't go up there every year, but we love going to Packwood for the pro solo there. It's just fabulous. I mean, and even for a smallish lot, that undulates a lot and has bumps and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter. It's just a great sight.
Yeah, there's no site like that. The views, Mount Rainier, Red Bob Volcano on your way up if you want to. It is phenomenal. Yeah, fabulous. And if you're just out there doing your local events and I don't know if I want to go and get my butt handed to me at a pro solo or what, you got to go do it. You got to go to some of these other places, around the country. I've been to Denver. I can remember going up there in the RX-3, racing at Stapleton Airport, and then later on at DIA, before they opened it. And we've been all over, not just Salina and then Topeka and then Lincoln, but we've been to Wendover, Utah, and places in California, and places in Nevada and Arizona and New Mexico, and you got to go do this stuff and meet people. I'm sure because of your traveling, Kinch, that you have friends all across the country. If you're in Southern California and on a weekend, on a race weekend, I would, you'd hurt my feelings if you didn't call me up and say, hey, Tom, I'm going to be around, because I'd put you in one of my cars or make sure that you're in somebody else's car, a car that's going to be fun. And, I found that to be true when I've traveled in other parts of the country, Oh, yeah. I've told several people, Leslie Cohen hasn't raced in a while. I said, Leslie, you can drive my car at Nationals or anywhere I go. You can hop in. And people will do that once you meet people in this community. It is amazing. Yeah, and that is one of the things about the solo community. It's just amazing. What other form of racing can you do that with? Yeah, it's hard to share your car on the track. Hey, that's right. Turn, take a lap. I love all your suggestions. Get seat time no matter what. I told somebody this weekend, I was like, hey, Chump Car. Oh, you bought that one. Let me know if I can be with you guys. It's fun, and like you're saying, you get the experience. Yep. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, Tom, it's been great. All right. It's been really fun. Thank you for doing this. Okay. And, let me, in addition to letting everybody else know how they can access all this, particularly since I'm not as tech savvy as obviously as you are, make sure you let me and everybody else know where we can go to listen to these podcasts and do more, be involved more in this kind of stuff. We'll do. And that's where literally, just so you know, you can listen on any phone via the website once I go ahead and send these things live, and or you can use the podcast apps that come with an iPhone or you put them on the other ones. So some people can go to a website and listen. You can also just use the apps that are on the phone, so it's that easy. Oh, and one question, just this is personal. Clay Turner came over when we were driving the GT3 and said, I hear these are so good you can leave traction control on. Have you ever heard that? Do you guys ever leave any of the traction control on? Wow. I haven't tried it in a late Porsche. I do know some people that have said that particularly if you have a traction or an anti-control type car that
has different grades. But I understand some of the track settings on some of the late cars can actually be quite good. I just haven't tried it in. I should probably talk with Steve Agina about that next time we're in the GT4 and say, hey, is there a traction control setting on this car that might make sense? Because we all kind of just automatically hop in and take traction control off.
Clay said that he heard the hot shoes, leave it on. I'm thinking, who's he talking about? We did email a bunch of the day. I should email him and ask him who specifically he was talking about, and was he talking autocross or track? Because Salil looked at me like, really? I always turn those all off, so that's what we were doing. I mean, once again, I've been blown away at how easy the car has been to drive, so I haven't gotten in too much trouble, luckily.
Mm-hmm.
But now,
I
I'm gonna.
I think as you push that car closer and closer to limit on a regular basis, you'll find it to be actually a little scarier.
Yeah, that's where the one run I kind of felt like I overdrove. I was just slower. I'm like, I just got a little bit. I worked it too much. Salil was blown away. I didn't even notice this. He goes, "You're working the rear of the car," and I'm like, "It's not loose at all." So evidently, what I consider loose is not good. So he was just amazed. And like you're saying, having a co-driver, he benefited. He goes, "Man, I'm benefiting a ton by riding and watching." So I was like, "Oh wow, really? I'm glad I can do anything decent in your car, honestly."
Excellent. Cool. All right. Well, if I have one thing, a final comment for everybody is make sure that you're having fun at it. Make sure that don't forget that you're here to have fun in addition to competing.
Yeah, and a lot of the fun, I think, be social, walk around. Most of these people will talk to you. If you come up to me and talk to me, I will talk to you. I'll let you get in my car most likely. I'll get in your car for sure.
Yep.
I'll tell people, if you have a Civic and you put 200 pounds in it, it's different. It doesn't stop.
Yep.
Like my brakes are broken. Oh no, I have 10% more weight over there. Oh, that's right.
That's right.
Tom, thank you very much. Have a great day out there. And we'll
all
be in
right.
contact.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. For the show notes and contact information, please visit autocrosstalk.com. There you can also subscribe so that we can keep you up to date on new shows as they come out. Also, please leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe on iTunes for the upcoming shows. You can connect to our Facebook page at facebook.com/autocrosstalk. You can share your thoughts, your insights, your questions, your suggestions there. Also share with your friends. Hopefully you found it entertaining and motivating, and hopefully other people will as well. It's been fun, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening, and check back next week for the next show.